Hello everyone, welcome. It's lovely to see you all again. Now, this month we are going to be looking at the story of Philip, and it's called Run, Philip, Run. I'm hoping you found all the materials or you've received by email or by post the information so that you can do all these things. But if you haven't, they should be visible on this post as sort of attachments and so on. So I hope you'll be able to get hold of them all. We're going to do all sorts of things. We're going to tell the story. But in order to tell the story, we're going to bake some cakes, we're going to make a scroll, and I think we're even going to try and make a chariot. Now, I must admit that sounds a bit complicated. I'm hoping that'll be easy enough to do, but let's see. We'll find out. Now, in order to help me do all of this, I've got my cast of friends here to help me. I've asked my cuddly friend to join in. Now, hello, Bakewell. This is Bakewell. Bakewell is very interested in what we're up to. He's incredibly nosy. But Bakewell will be helping us out with some of the acting and some of the cooking, I think. Penny isn't with us now, but she will be when we're doing the cooking. Oh, this is my friend James. Yes, James wants. You can see Dandy's tail there. Well, James is trying to get himself into camera as well because he wants to be seen. And Dandy is very old. Dandy's the dog that I had, little cuddly dog that I've had ever since I was a little child. And Dandy's got some wisdom and knowledge, and he'll be very useful to us, I think, later on. Now, somewhere around here is the star from last time's video, our friend who played the part of Jonah. Do you remember all of that? When we did Jonah and the whale, and Jonah was out at sea, and then, hello, there you are, Daisy. And Daisy is going to help us out again today. But do you think this time, we ought to let somebody else do some of the acting? No? Well, I'm sure you would let somebody else have a go this time, because we want to share, don't we? We all want to share in this together. Yes? All right, well, tell me then, who should we have? Who do you think would like to help out this time? Dandy. Well, I know Dandy's a lovely dog, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure that Dandy's really into sort of running around in chariots and things that we're going to need for all of this acting. How about James? Shall we get James to do it this week? Is that a no? It's a sort of a maybe. All right, well, maybe we'll have James do it. Okay, so we have our story to tell, Run, Philip, Run, and it's also our birthday. Messy Church is 7 years old. Happy birthday, Messy Church. And since we last met, the church celebrated its birthday, and by the birthday we mean something called Pentecost, and this is the time we celebrate that Jesus went back up to heaven and he sent the Holy Spirit to be with his followers. It was just like having Jesus with them, helping them and guiding them. Jesus' friends told everyone they met. So the first church was formed then and continues today. So that's what we think of. We think of that as being the date that the church started. And we're part of that church now, 2,000 years on. Yes, 2,000 years, Dandy. That makes you look young. So that's our story. That's what we're going to do. That's our activities. Philip was one of Jesus' special friends. We sometimes call them disciples, and was told by God to go into the desert. Philip was puzzled, but the Holy Spirit nudged him to run fast and catch up with a chariot. As Philip ran beside the chariot, he met a man from Ethiopia who was reading a scroll. They were verses from the Bible. He invited Philip to sit in his chariot, and Philip told him all about Jesus. The man from Ethiopia decided that he too wanted to follow Jesus, and when they came to a river, he was baptized. So we're going to tell that story, and we're going to tell it with the chariot. But before we do any of that, we're going to do something far more important. We are going to cook some cakes. So come with me into the kitchen, and we'll get my little team there to start putting together the recipe. Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Messy Church. And this week we're celebrating Messy Church 7th birthday. So we are here, my little team, Penny and Dozy there, and Bakewell over there with the recipe, and we are celebrating the 7th birthday by making some little birthday cakes for us to share in. And we've got our ingredients together. We need some butter or margarine, and we need some self-raising flour and some caster sugar. And you can see that Penny back there has got 2 eggs already sitting there ready to go. It also suggests we might want to use some vanilla essence. Well, I'm not sure we've got any, but I'll have a look in a minute. And we also perhaps might want to use some icing sugar. It also says cherries in the recipe, but it says all this is optional. You might need to improvise a bit because you won't necessarily have all the ingredients, especially in these lockdown situations. You kind of have to use whatever you can get your hands on. I haven't got quite the right type of sugar, so I'm using some that I've found in the cupboard. Anyway, we've got our mixing bowl and a tablespoon and some scales. I'm not probably going to use it. It suggests using an electric mixer. I might mix mine by hand because I don't think I'm not sure about our electric mixer. So the cupcakes, as you can see, are already there, in there behind Dozy, who is being useful as always. I'm sure you remember Dozy's performance last time in the story of Jonah and the whale. We've got our baking tray and a small bowl or cup. Well, I'm looking forward to having a go at this. I don't think it's a very complicated recipe. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. Dozy, what are you doing? You are not a cake. That is not a particularly hygienic way of doing things. So come on out of there. We need to get on with this because we need to get these baked. Well, I actually think we've done rather well considering how much help I had from Dozy, who was a little bit impatient to get it all finished in about 2 seconds flat, but we sort of threw all the ingredients into the bowl ready to go, and in the background you can hear that the oven is warming up. We've set that to 170 degrees. I think it's gas mark 3. Obviously get an adult to help you with that. And over here, Penny is very kindly sorting it out so that the mixture goes into the little paper cups. There you go. So that hopefully will turn into our cupcakes, and then we'll be able to eat them and celebrate our 7th birthday of Messy Church. Well, perhaps not entirely surprisingly, we've had to make a second batch of mixture because my little friends and helpers here, it turns out, must have eaten so much of the last mixture that there wasn't enough to fill up all the little cupcake holders to go in the oven. So I've made some more. So let's see if we can get this lot in as well. And since they only take 12 minutes to cook, it should be fine, shouldn't it? Stop eating the batter. Well, there you go. You can see our completed cakes, and they all came out a little bit differently, but we decorated them with some icing sugar. So thank you, team, you did a great job. Now, fairly soon, once we've finished all our cakes and had something to drink, we're going to make ourselves some things for the story that we're going to do. A story about somebody called Philip. Now, we'll need an actor, won't we, to play Philip in our story later on. So what do you think of your cakes, guys? Are they good? Dandy, I see that you've made one as well. I say, look what you've been up to. Well, I think Dandy's been slightly cheating because that cake looks a lot more complicated than the ones we made. He's been adding rainbow filling and all sorts of things on the top. Do you know, Dandy, I think you've been showing off a bit, but Dandy's a lot older than the other teddies. He's very experienced at cooking, I think. So, onwards to the story. So, as you can probably see, my little friends are still here trying to help me out. I am beginning to wonder how much help they are sometimes. Anyway, we've hopefully all got cakes now, and we're going to go on shortly to have a go at making the chariot. But amongst all the materials that you've had, just to remind you, there is also the opportunity to make a windsock there on that one. And along with the scroll and the cakes, there's also Philip and the Ethiopian word search there. So if you want to do a word search, and also Philip and the Ethiopian official jigsaw puzzle. Who knew that they would have all those things? So there you go. And there's all sorts of other materials there as well, all connected to it. So I hope you found all of that, and I hope you've got hold of it. So before we go on to the chariot, it seemed to me that some of these things might look a bit complicated, but actually when you go to do a bit like those cakes, when we first read the recipe, it looked a bit complicated, but actually it wasn't that difficult. We chucked it all in the bowl and it all came out fine, didn't it? So I wonder whether or not we should go and have a look at what Chris has been up to and what Pam's been up to in putting together some of those activities. So let's go and have a look at some pictures of Pam and Chris who've had a go at some of the activities on our behalf. So for the next part, we've moved out into the garden, and you can probably hear the wind blowing as I sit here. Now, the reason we're out here is because we decided we wanted to try and build the chariot so we could tell you the story, and so that the Ethiopian could sit in the chariot and Philip could run alongside, and so on and so forth. But we also had an idea that we might be able to get a friend of ours involved who might want to pull the chariot for us. Now, I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to give it a go. But in order to do that, we slightly amended the instructions that you received that were posted out with all the materials. Now you can see here that Penny is taking a very good look at all the materials that were sent out in the post and on the emails, and you'll see that it says things like you might need boxes and paper plates and a glue stick, sellotape and so on. It's actually all relatively straightforward, and I do hope you had a go at making it. I think Penny was a bit disappointed that we changed the plan. She does like us to follow what's written down, but we had to slightly alter it, and this is why. You see, this friend of mine is a bit big for the original design. So here he is. This is my friend Doc. Now, he's a little bit sleepy at the moment, but I'm hoping he might wake up a bit later and help us pull the chariot. Now, Doc is a big, fluffy white bunny, and he's quite strong, so you could imagine that he would eat through string if we use string to make the harness and so on for the chariot. And as almost certainly, if we didn't make it big enough, he'd just squash it. So, hello, Doc. I'm introducing you to our friends at Messy Church, if you haven't met them before, and we will now take a look at the chariot and how to make it. So here's my team getting the chariot ready. Bakewell's holding it up there. And as always, of course, Dosie's trying to get in on the act. Did you two decide who was going to actually play the parts? Okay, so James is going to play the Ethiopian, and Dozie, you've managed to get in and play Philip. Well, I kind of thought you might do that, but that was a little bit sneaky of you. Now, you can see all we've done is taken the box and covered it in yellow paper. We seem to have an awful lot of that yellow paper, and I'm not quite sure why, but there's plenty of it around. So we used that to cover up an old box. And then, because we're going to try and ask Doc to pull it, we needed some stronger wheels and an axle. So here's the wheels, and as you can see, I've stapled those. Now, if you're going to use a knife or staple, then do get somebody grown up to help you do it, because that can be a little bit dangerous, so do be careful. So there we are. I stapled those two plates together, but you could glue them. And then I made a hole right in the middle, and then you can see there I've made a hole in each side of the box, and I've put a rolled up piece of cardboard covered in sticky tape right the way through the middle, and there's the wheel on the other side. And then, because we knew that Doc would almost certainly eat any string that we used, I've made the harness to pull the chariot, as demonstrated there by Dandy. I've actually made it out of the wire from an old charger, and like lots of us, I'm sure there's about 20 of those laying around your house. Nobody ever knows what to do with them, so I thought we'd use that. Also, we've made the scroll, and there is the scroll ready to go, because of course the Ethiopian was reading the scriptures from the back of the chariot. Now, ours says, Jesus said, I will be with you always, and we know that Philip did talk to the Ethiopian about Jesus, so that's good. But just to let you know, when we're not doing this as a little drama, that actually, of course, the scriptures would have been scrolls from the temple or the synagogue, and they wouldn't have been the Bible that we know exactly today. They'd be more like bits of the Old Testament or the Torah from the Jewish faith. So just bear that in mind. Although ours says, Jesus said, I will be with you always, of course, in those days, the Bible hadn't actually been written. So there you go. I think we're ready to go. We have a scroll. We have a penny checking the details. We have Dandy standing in for Doc at the moment. We have Dozy ready to play the part of Philip. We have James ready to play the part of the Ethiopian. And we have one, hopefully quite substantial, Chariot. So finally, I think we're ready to tell the story of Run, Philip, Run. Are you ready, Dozy? There he is. You're going to play Philip, aren't you? Yeah, excellent, wonderful. Right then. So, Philip was one of Jesus' special friends. We sometimes call them disciples or apostles. Anyway, one of Jesus' special friends. Now, after Jesus went up to heaven, Philip, filled with the Holy Spirit. What do you mean, how are you going to play the Holy Spirit? I mean, you know what it feels like to have the love of God inside you, yeah? Well, what does that feel like to you? What does it feel like to have the love of God inside you? Oh, okay, great. That's wonderful. That'll do fine. I think we'll get the general idea. So, Philip, filled with the Holy Spirit, was travelling... Calm down, Dozy. All right. Was travelling around the Holy Land, preaching and telling people about Jesus. As you can see, Philip was used to talking to really big crowds and lots of people in towns. One day, God told Philip to go out into the desert, a place where there were no towns and no people, and he was puzzled. But he knew that God would do the right thing, so he went anyway. Well, I did try and get the bunnies to help, but I think Bugsy wasn't that interested. Never mind. What about you, Doc? Do you want to help? No. Okay. I think we're going to have to tell this story another way. I'll have to get someone else to help pull the chariot. It was there in the desert that Philip saw a man riding in a chariot. And the Holy Spirit gave him a bit of a nudge to go and talk to the man. What do you mean, what am I doing? I was being the Holy Spirit giving you a nudge. Philip ran fast. Philip ran as fast as he could, and soon he was running alongside the chariot. He discovered that the man in the chariot was a very important person, that he was the treasurer of the government in Ethiopia. And Philip noticed that the man was reading from a scroll, and as Philip ran alongside the chariot, he could hear the man was reading from the scriptures. "How can I unless someone explains it to me?" said the man, and he invited Philip to come and sit in the chariot with him. And as they travelled along the road, Philip told the man all about Jesus. The man from Ethiopia decided he also wanted to follow Jesus. As they came to a river, the man stopped the chariot and asked Philip to baptize him in the water. And so Philip did, and he was baptized in the river. And Philip said goodbye, and the Ethiopian travelled on his way, knowing that Jesus was with him, even when he went into Africa. And Philip travelled on to more towns to tell more people about Jesus. Well, that's it for our story today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you get to play out the story too. It's all been good fun. See you again soon.